Star Wars Outlaws is exactly what you'd expect from a Ubisoft game. Polished visuals, stunning environments, top-notch sound design, and yet, somehow, they still manage to cock it all up. It's like watching someone expertly build a house of cards only to sneeze at the last minute. And before you go wagging your fingers thinking, here's Reggie just taking another cheap shot at Ubisoft, well, let's get one thing straight. There's actually a fair bit to like in here. That's because Ubisoft doesn't make awful games. Instead, they're just the masters of mediocrity. Outlaws then is just the poster child for this, so grab yourself a pint, something stronger maybe, and settle in as we go all Star Wars in today's review. You know you're balls deep in a Ubisoft game when the very first mission tries its hardest to bore you into submission. To unlock an item you got to pay the local riffraff with some credits, so they've got you stealing cash from the local law enforcement with your sidekick mate called Nix, basically a rat with antennae that has a knack for winding people up. You can send this little bugger to distract guards, squeeze through gaps, to flip switches, maybe even sabotage an alarm or two. It's very Ubisoft, giving them a way out for any lazy level design. And here's the piss take. In that early section, you've got him swiping credits from guards so dumb that they just stand there, slack-jawed as your rat mate nicks their wallet and trots it right back to you, mere feet away, and they don't bat an eyelid through the whole thing. Right off the bat then, you can tell that the AI is going to be about as sharp as a sack of wet potatoes. It's very Ubisoft. As the story unfolds, you'll find yourself quickly not giving a toss about it. Not because it lacks twists or turns, but because the main protagonist, Kay, has the personality of a tuna melt. You're immediately offing harmless civilians, just some poor sods hired to guard a bit of property or bouncers trying to make a few quid to keep the missus and kids fed. But Kay, she couldn't give a flying toss about their struggles, mowing them down without a second thought. Her constant quips, cringy one-liners, and utter blind trust of anyone she crosses paths with will have you rolling your eyes so hard you might just see your own brain. But credit where it's due, the story does eventually pick up, and it's the Underworld reputation system that really steals the show. In Outlaws, you'll end up rubbing shoulders with 3 crime lords. You'll be running jobs for them, maybe hitting a stash, nicking some valuable items, or just being an all-round arsehole. The catch, of course, make one happy and you're bound to piss off the other. But that's where the fun begins, because you've got plenty of chances to double-cross these scoundrels, maybe even hand the spoils to a rival faction just for kicks. It's a cracking system, no doubt, but what really juices it up is that for each reputation tier, there's a nice little reward waiting for you. Maybe an area becomes less restrictive, meaning you don't have to go on another murder spree of innocent bystanders, or you might bag yourself some special loot or a cheeky discount at the local merchant. Brilliant stuff, right? But be careful, push your luck too far and you'll find yourself in a right old pickle. Instead of strolling through like Mr. Nice Guy, you'll be hacking your way through hordes of enemies just to get from point A to point B. This constant tug of war in the power dynamics kept me hooked, and as far as reputation systems go, Outlaws has nailed it better than many other games in recent memory. And the praise for Outlaws don't stop there, because where this game truly shines is in its environments. For a game to feel proper Star Warsy, it needs to be the sum of its parts, and I tell you what, Ubisoft has absolutely nailed that. The vast open world planets are a visual treat, with trees swaying gracefully as the wind tugs at their branches, and little lakes and swamps nestled at the foot of hills reflects every bit of detail around them. And then there are the cities and towns, bustling with life, full of people going about their day, selling a load of crap or zipping by on their speeders. The hustle and bustle of city life will bounce through your speakers too, making you feel like you've stepped right into the Star Wars universe. These locations have an undeniable energy, a certain purpose that brings the whole place to life. It's as if George Lucas himself gave it the thumbs up, because the authenticity is spot on. But for any Star Wars fan, the attention to detail is something to be admired. Every little nuance and nod to the franchise is here, and it's bloody brilliant. Even the vents that you crawl through have detail in them, a look and feel that you'd imagine is architecture straight from the films. But again, we've been here before with Ubisoft games, haven't we? And we know where this is heading. You see, when it comes to actual gameplay, it's a bit of a dog's breakfast. Ubisoft has this knack for knowing all the ingredients, but not a clue on how to make a decent meal out of them. It's like that old saying, knowledge is knowing tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. That's Ubisoft in a nutshell. They've got all the right ideas, but when it comes to actually putting them together, they're about as useful as a chocolate teapot. Combat combat in Outlaws is an absolute shambles, downright embarrassing if I'm honest. There she is, our 5'9" heroine straight out of the 80s in her skin-tight get-up with all the muscle mass of a malnourished child from rural Africa, yet somehow she's got the strength of bloody Mike Tyson. She's out there absolutely demolishing stormtroopers in full gear. We're talking the big helmeted types where she casually punches them in the face and somehow the force ripples through their armour, shattering their brains as they collapse in a heap within seconds. Utter nonsense, lads. And if you're not already fed up with the combat, you'll be smashing stormtrooper after stormtrooper in the game's endless stealth sections. Seriously, I didn't realise I'd signed up for a bloody stealth simulator. Maybe that's more on me for not doing my homework, but I was shocked at how stealthy this whole affair turned out to be. You're constantly in crouch mode, dodging the gaze of enemies or sneaking up to take them out. Get spotted and boom, alarms are blaring and you're starting the whole bloody section all over again. The real kicker is the mission design. It leaves you with bugger all options to achieve your objective. Sure, the play area might be big, but you can tell the game's practically pushing you down one specific path, and if you stray, it's going to be tough as nails. But the moment you find that golden pathway, it's so laughably easy, you start wondering why they even bothered with the stealth at all. Countless times I got caught because my rat sidekick didn't quite nail the decoy routine, or get this, when you take a stormtrooper out, you can't even move the body. It's just left there, in plain sight, waiting to be found. What a load of old bollocks. But at least the gunplay is good, right? Well, sadly, not a chance. Now, don't get me wrong, sticking to a blaster only is a pretty good design choice. It's very roguelike and honestly a nice change from swinging lightsabers around like a deranged Jedi. The issue here, though, is that it just feels so unsatisfying. There's no weight to the combat. Sometimes you nail a headshot and it does bugger all. Other times it wipes the enemy out. It's a lottery and not the fun kind. The basic cover system is there, but the environments don't break down or force you to think twice. The enemies, well, they're so thick they just stand there in the open waiting to be shot from afar, or they park themselves right next to a conveniently placed bright red fuel tank, practically begging for a face full of burning fuel. They don't flank you, they don't run for cover. In fact, they barely do anything at all except try to outnumber you like a bunch of lemmings. Sure, you can pick up their rifles after they drop dead, but for some inexplicable reason, you can't take them with you. Climb a ladder and Kay suddenly turns into a toddler who can't figure out how to do two things at once. Drop in that precious rifle on the floor, crawl through a vent, and she inexplicably leaves the rifle behind like it's too much to handle. The best word to sum it up is stale, and for how good it could have been, for the adrenaline rush we could have had, this feels more like the moment after a massive Christmas dinner when all you want to do is nap and eventually take a massive shit. Like all games in the Ubisoft formula, Outlaws comes with the usual upgrades, which are about as basic as you'd expect. You've got your typical unlock mini games, which to be fair, I actually didn't mind too much here. Slicing a control panel became more about hitting buttons to a certain rhythm, and that was a decent enough distraction for me. One of the big selling points of the game is of course the space flight, but honestly it was so-so for me. The flight mechanics feel like you're being yanked around on a cable. Everything was a little bit too rigid, lacking that sense of free motion that you'd expect. As for space combat, it's your typical affair. Blast away as many times as possible without much in the way of strategy. But I tell you what I did like, and something Starfield should definitely take note of, the immersive way that you transition from planet to space and back again. Sure, it's just a loading screen, but it never pulls you out of the action, and I'm all for that. It's the little things that count. That's what she said. Graphically, I can't fault what's on offer here. On PC at full settings, this thing is an absolute dream, with a level of detail that pulls in all manner of objects from miles away. Vegetation crests over distant hills, dust kicks up at speeders as they zip on by, and water splashes around your boots. It's all there, lads. I've got to say I love how the volumetric fog rolls in from vents, or how the light bounces from wall to wall, diffusing itself as it goes. We've already touched upon how the environments look and feel, and that's down to the high level of detail that gets packed into every orifice. Every little container or slate on a building has a texture that matches, and props litter the tables and rooms, making the cities feel like bustling hubs of trade and commerce. It all runs really well, with plenty of options to get the most out of whatever rig it is that you're packing, and in a rare move, the game is natively ultra-wide by default. So, Master Race Reddit people, rejoice. However, characters do look a bit gormless at times, which is ironic considering the most alien looking ones have the most human expressions in how energised they are, and whilst many textures are great, some are flat and uninspiring that rear their ugly head from time to time, like the pretty girl with a massive pussy spot on her chin. But here's where the shit hits the fan. Even with my beastly rig, I've had crash after crash since a day one patch, and I'm not alone either. A few others on Reddit are moaning about the same thing, and who knows when this will get sorted, hopefully soon. Recording this footage for you then was frankly a royal pain in the arse because of how many times I was restarting whole sections of the game. When it comes to sound, Outlaws is an absolute tour de force, pun intended, of the Star Wars universe. I've no clue if they roped in someone from the movie franchise, but whoever was behind the sound design here, they deserve all the praise. Each planet has its own soundtrack, ebbing and flowing in the background, proper authentic stuff it is, and close your eyes, you'd instantly know that you're in the Star Wars universe without ever glancing at your screen. Sound effects are mostly spot on too, with city chatter, doors sliding open and vehicles rumbling by, all adding to the atmosphere. That said, while they're authentic, a lot of the key sound effects lack a bit of oomph. Blasters, for instance, sound like those cheap toy knockoffs that you find from a dodgy Amazon seller. The dialogue for the most part is well acted though. As I've mentioned, I never really gave a toss about our main protagonist, but still it's a very solid package overall and one that's hard to take a swing at. So as we wrap up here, what's so bloody frustrating about Outlaws is that there's genuinely a good game buried somewhere deep within. Ubisoft clearly has the amazing designers and artists, a powerful game engine to boot, and the cash to bag these mega licenses. But when it comes to gameplay, it's a drab affair. Terrible AI, hilariously bad hand-to-hand combat, frustratingly overused stealth sections, and a world that, whilst beautifully designed, feels a bit too convenient in helping you reach your objective. Simply put, it's a Ubisoft game, built to sell millions, crafted for the masses. It never once dares to take a risk or veer off in a new direction. Instead, it's wrapped itself in multiple condoms, playing it so safe when its audience is begging to be entertained, craving an exhilarating space extravaganza. And with that, love to you all, Reggie out.